The year was 2547, and humanity had been lying to the galaxy for exactly 300 years. It all started in 2247, when the first alien ship appeared in Earth's sky. The vessel was massive, shaped like a silver teardrop, and it hung over the Pacific Ocean for 3 days before anyone came out. When the aliens finally emerged, they called themselves the Galactic Collective, a union of over 400 different species that ruled most of the known galaxy. They looked at Earth. They scanned its cities, its farms, its oceans. They examined human technology with something close to pity. Chemical rockets, nuclear power, computers that still used physical chips. To them, humanity was like a child playing with wooden toys while adults built starships. The collective's assessment was simple and cruel. Threat level 0. Humans were not dangerous. They were not useful. They were barely worth noticing. And that was exactly what Admiral Park Jisoo wanted them to think. Jisoo was 62 years old, with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen too much. She had joined Earth's secret defense program at 19, back when it was just a dream shared by a handful of frightened leaders. Now she commanded the greatest military force humanity had ever built, and not a single alien knew it existed. The hidden bases were everywhere, inside hollowed-out asteroids in the Kuiper Belt, buried beneath the frozen surface of Europa, floating in the thick clouds of Venus, hidden in the radiation storms around Jupiter, where alien sensors could not penetrate. For 3 centuries, humanity had been building warships in secret, developing weapons that the collective could not imagine, and training soldiers who would never see daylight until the day they were needed. Another trade delegation from the Veluxy reported Captain Kang Do-yoon, her second in command. He was a tall man in his 40s, with a serious face and a wife and 2 daughters waiting for him back on Earth. They want to inspect our mining operations on Mars. Jisoo smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Let them inspect. Show them the old equipment, the slow machines. Make sure they leave thinking we are still primitive. Dohan nodded, but his jaw was tight. How long do we keep doing this, Admiral? Our people are suffering. The collective taxes us for everything. They take our food, our minerals, our labor. They treat us like servants in our own solar system. I know, Jisoo said quietly. But we are not ready to fight. Not yet. The Veluxy alone have 10,000 warships. We have less than 3,000. And there are other empires in the collective who are even stronger. Then when? Do-hyun asked. When do we stop hiding? Jisoo turned to look at the main screen, which showed a live image of Earth, blue oceans, green continents, the lights of cities glowing in the darkness. 8 billion people live down there, most of them unaware of the secret war being prepared on their behalf. When they give us no other choice, she said. When they cross the final line. The Veluxy were the military arm of the Galactic Collective. They were tall, insect-like creatures with hard shells and 4 arms, and they had been conquering other species for over 5,000 years. Their empire stretched across 300 star systems, built on the bones of 17 civilizations they had destroyed or enslaved. For a long time, Earth had been safe from them. The planet had nothing the Veluxy wanted. No rare minerals. No strategic location. No advanced technology worth stealing. Humans were useful only as cheap labor, and there were easier places to find workers. But Ambassador Yoon Hana had been sending warnings for months. Hana was Earth's official representative to the Collective Council, a brilliant diplomat who spent her days smiling at aliens who despised her while secretly sending encrypted messages back home. A latest report had arrived just that morning, and it had made Jisoo's blood run cold. The Veluxy are running out of targets, Hana had written. They have conquered everyone within easy reach. Their economy depends on expansion, on new slaves and new resources. And they have started looking at Sol System with hungry eyes. Jisoo had read the report 3 times, memorizing every word. The Veluxi did not want Earth's minerals or its location. They wanted its people. 8 billion humans, perfect for working in their mining colonies and factory worlds. A slave population large enough to fuel their empire for another century. They will come, Jisoo said to herself, staring at the image of Earth. Maybe not today. Maybe not this year. But they will come. She had been preparing for this moment her entire life. Every hidden shipyard. Every secret weapon. Every soldier trained in the darkness. It was all for this. The day when humanity would finally show the galaxy what it was truly capable of. But she also knew the cost. War with the Veluxi would not be quick or clean. Millions would die. Maybe billions. Cities would burn. Families would be torn apart. The peaceful life that most humans enjoyed would be shattered forever. Admiral, Do-hyun said, interrupting her thoughts. There is something else. Intelligence reports that a Veluxi battle fleet has been gathering at their staging area near the border. Over 200 warships. Jisoo felt her heart grow cold. 200? That is more than they have ever sent to a single target before. Yes, and our spies say they have been loading the ships with containment equipment. Slave collars. Transport cages. Do-hyun's voice was steady, but his hands were clenched into fists. They are not coming to negotiate. They are coming to take us. Jisoo closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of 300 years pressing down on her shoulders. Every admiral before her had faced this same fear. The fear that the enemy would come before they were ready. The fear that all their preparations would not be enough. But she had also inherited something else from those who came before her. A promise. A sacred vow that had been passed down from commander to commander since the very beginning. No matter what happens, humanity will survive. We will not go quietly into the darkness. We will fight. She opened her eyes and looked at Do-hyun. Send word to all hidden bases. Increase production. Cancel all leave. I want every ship that can fly ready for combat within 30 days. And the official government? Do-hyun asked. President Beek and the public leaders? Tell them nothing. If the collective suspects we are preparing for war, they will attack before we are ready. The president must continue to smile and bow and pretend we are harmless. That is his role in this. Do-hyun saluted and turned to leave, but Jisoo called out to him. Do-hyun, your family, your wife and daughters. They are in Seoul, yes? He paused at the door, his back stiff. Yes, Admiral. When this begins, I want you to bring them to safety. To one of the hidden stations. I will not ask you to fight while worrying about them. Do-hyun turned to face her, and for a moment, his serious mask cracked. She saw the fear underneath. The love. The desperate hope that he would not have to choose between his duty and his family. Thank you, Admiral, he said quietly. But if the Veluxi come for Earth, there will be no safe place. Not for anyone. He left, and Jisoo was alone with her thoughts. She looked at Earth again, at the beautiful blue planet that had given birth to her species. Somewhere down there, children were playing. Families were eating dinner together. People were falling in love, growing old, living their simple lives without knowing that everything was about to change. Forgive me, she whispered to no one. Forgive me for what is coming. The deception had protected them for 3 centuries. But time was running out, and soon the galaxy would learn the truth about humanity. They were not primitives. They were not harmless. They were the most dangerous species the universe had ever seen. They just had not shown it yet. The Veluxi fleet arrived without warning on a quiet Tuesday morning. 200 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel just beyond Mars' orbit. their massive hulls blocking out the stars like a wall of death. Each ship was covered in dark armor and bristling with plasma cannons. And at the center of the formation sat the flagship of First Claw of Rexus, the most feared military commander in the Veluxy Empire. Rexus was old, even by Veluxy standards. His shell had turned from brown to gray, and one of his forearms had been replaced with a mechanical limb after a battle long ago. But his mind was still sharp, and his hatred for lesser species had only grown stronger with age. He had personally overseen the conquest of 6 civilizations, and he considered it his sacred duty to bring the glory of the Veluxy to every corner of the galaxy. Earth was simply his latest target. A primitive world filled with soft, weak creatures who had never known real war. It would fall within days, maybe hours. "Open a channel to the planet," Rexus commanded, settling his massive body into his command chair. "Let them know their masters have arrived." His message was broadcast across every frequency, reaching every screen and speaker on Earth. Billions of humans stopped what they were doing and listened to the alien voice that would change their lives forever. "People of Earth," Rexus said, his translator turning his clicking speech into cold, flat words. "I am First Claw of Rexus of the Veluxy Empire. Your planet is now under military control. You will surrender immediately. You will provide a complete census of your population within 24 hours. And you will select 500 million individuals for labor redistribution to Veluxy colony worlds." He paused, letting the words sink in. 500 million people, slaves, taken from their homes and families to work in alien mines until they died. If you comply, the remaining population will be allowed to continue their lives under Veluxy supervision. If you resist, we will demonstrate the consequences. You have 6 hours to respond. The transmission ended, and Earth erupted into chaos. President Beak Sunho appeared on emergency broadcasts, his face pale and his hands shaking. He called for calm. He promised that negotiations were underway. He begged the people not to panic while diplomats worked to find a peaceful solution. But there was no peaceful solution. Rexus had not come to negotiate. He had come to take dot in the hidden command center buried beneath the mountains of Norway. Admiral Park Jisu watched the Veluxy fleet with cold eyes. Her staff surrounded her, all of them tense and waiting for orders. The moment they had prepared for had finally arrived. "Status of the Armada," she said quietly. "All ships at combat readiness," reported one of her officers. 2,847 vessels ready to deploy on your command." Jizu nodded slowly. They were outnumbered, but not by much. And their ships were better, faster, more powerful. 3 centuries of secret development had given humanity weapons that the Veluxy could not imagine, but she hesitated. Once she gave the order, there would be no going back. The war would begin, and millions would die. Perhaps billions. Was she ready to make that choice? Was she ready to carry that weight for the rest of her life? "Admiral," Captain Doyen said urgently, "we need to move now, before they get deeper into the system." "Not yet," Jisu said. "We wait. Wait for what?" Before she could answer, one of the communication officers shouted in alarm. "Admiral, the Veluxy are charging their weapons. They are targeting Seoul." Jisu's blood turned to ice. "What?" "First Claw of Rexus is broadcasting again." Rexus appeared on the screen, his insect face twisted into something that might have been a smile. 6 hours was too generous, he said. "Your leaders waste time with meaningless words while my soldiers grow restless. So I will give you a small lesson. A demonstration of what happens to species that do not obey." "No," Jisu whispered. No. "So," Rexus continued, "a city of 30 million. A small price to pay for a valuable lesson." The Veluxy flagship fired first. A beam of blue plasma, bright as a second sun, streaked across space and slammed into the heart of Sol. Then another ship fired. Then another. Within seconds, 200 warships were pouring death onto a single city, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop them. The bombardment lasted 11 minutes. When it finally ended, Sol was gone. Not destroyed, not damaged, gone. Where 30 million people had lived and worked and loved just minutes before, there was now only a crater of melted glass and burning ash. The shock wave had flattened everything within 50 kilometers. The fires would burn for weeks. 8 million people died in those 11 minutes. 8 million souls, erased from existence because an alien warlord wanted to teach humanity a lesson. In a hidden command center, there was only silence. Officers stared at their screens with tears running down their faces. Some had fallen to their knees. Others simply stood frozen, unable to process what they had just witnessed. Captain Doyen stood perfectly still, his eyes fixed on the screen showing the burning crater that had once been his home. His wife, his daughters, his parents, everyone he loved, gone in a flash of blue light. His hands did not shake. His voice did not waver. But when he turned to look at Admiral Jisoo, she saw something in his eyes that she had never seen before. Something cold and hard and utterly without mercy. "Admiral," he said, his voice flat and empty, "I believe they have crossed the line." Jisoo stared at him for a long moment. Then she looked around at her staff, at the men and women who had dedicated their lives to this moment. They were all watching her, waiting for the words that would change everything. She thought about the 8 million dead, the children who would never grow up, the families who would never be reunited, the dreams that had been burned to ash in 11 minutes of alien cruelty, and she felt something break inside her. The last chain of restraint, the final hope for peace. It shattered like glass, and in its place rose something ancient and terrible. The same fury that had driven her ancestors to survive ice ages and plagues and world wars. The same stubborn refusal to die that had made humanity the most dangerous species in the galaxy. "Signal all hidden assets," she said, her voice steady as stone. "Wake the Armada. Activate Protocol Midnight. All ships to combat positions." Around her, officers scrambled to obey. Messages flew across the solar system at the speed of light, reaching secret bases that had waited decades for this moment. Engines roared to life. Weapons powered up. Soldiers who had trained in darkness finally put on their armor and prepared for war. "And someone get me a direct channel to that Veluxi bastard," Jisoo added, her eyes burning with cold fire. "I want him to see what is coming for him." Far away, in orbit around the burning Earth, First Claw of Rexus was celebrating his easy victory. He had taught the humans their place. Soon they would surrender, and he would return home a hero with 500 million new slaves for the Empire. He had no idea that his death was already racing toward him from every corner of the solar system. Humanity was done hiding, and the galaxy was about to learn why it should have been afraid of them from the very beginning. First Claw of Rexus was enjoying a meal when his tactical officer started screaming. The old warrior looked up from his food with annoyance. He had just finished the most successful operation of his career. Sol was burning. The humans were panicking, and soon their pathetic leaders would come crawling to him with surrender offers. This was supposed to be a moment of triumph. Why was his officer making such noise? What is the meaning of this? Rexus demanded. The tactical officer turned to face him, and Rexus felt a chill run through his old bones. He had seen that expression before, on the faces of soldiers who had witnessed something impossible, something terrifying. "Contacts, First Claw," the officer said, his voice shaking. "Multiple contacts. Emerging from everywhere." Rexus pushed himself out of his chair and moved to the main display screen. What he saw there made his heart stop beating for a full 3 seconds. Behind the dark side of Earth's moon, ships were appearing. Not small ships, not scout vessels or cargo transports. These were warships, massive and bristling with weapons, and they were decloaking one after another like ghosts materializing from thin air. Each one was bigger than anything in his fleet. Each one radiated power that his sensors could barely measure. 40 contacts behind the moon, his tactical officer reported, his voice rising with each word. 200 more emerging from the asteroid belt. 100 from Jupiter orbit. More from Saturn. More from Neptune. They just keep coming. Rexus gripped the edge of the display console so hard that his claws left marks in the metal. This was impossible. The humans had no fleet. Their technology was primitive. They could barely reach their own moon with their pathetic chemical rockets. Where had these ships come from? 500 contacts, the tactical officer said. 800. 1,000. Still more emerging. That is enough. Rexus shouted. Raise shields. All ships to battle formation. Prepared to. Every screen on his bridge flickered and went dark. Then a human face appeared, and Rexus found himself staring into the coldest eyes he had ever seen. Admiral Park Jisoo did not look afraid. She did not look angry. She looked like death itself, patient and certain and completely without mercy. First claw of Rexus, she said, her voice cutting through the bridge like a blade. For 300 years you looked at humanity and saw prey. You saw farmers, scientists, merchants, primitives playing with toys while the real powers of the galaxy laughed at us. She leaned forward slightly, and Rexus felt an ancient instinct telling him to run, to flee, to get as far away from this creature as possible. You never thought to ask a simple question, Jisoo continued. You never wondered how a species that survived ice ages, plagues, famines, and 2 world wars might have learned to hide its true strength. You never considered that we might be waiting, watching, building, preparing for the day when someone would be foolish enough to cross the final line. The display behind her changed, showing a tactical map of the solar system. Red dots marked the Veluxy fleet, clustered together near Earth, and surrounding them, closing in from every direction, were thousands of blue dots. You killed 8 million of our people today, Jisoo said. Children, mothers, fathers, grandparents. You burned them alive because you wanted to teach us a lesson. Her eyes narrowed, and Rexus felt something he had not felt in over a century of warfare. Fear. Pure. Primal fear. Now we will teach you one. The transmission ended, and the bridge exploded into chaos. Officers shouted orders. Alarms blared. The Veluxy fleet scrambled to form defensive positions, but it was already too late. The human armada had them surrounded. How many ships? Rexus demanded. Give me a final count. His tactical officer looked at him with despair in his eyes. 2,847 confirmed warships. And First Claw. Their weapons signatures. We have nothing in our database that matches them. We do not know what they can do. Rexus stared at the display, watching the blue dots close in around his fleet like the jaws of a great beast. 200 against nearly 3,000. Those were not odds. Those were a death sentence. All ships, prepare to retreat, he ordered. We will jump to hyperspace, and, First Claw, we cannot. The humans have deployed some kind of gravity field. It is blocking our jump drives. Then we fight our way out. All weapons, target the nearest enemy vessels and fire at will. The Veluxy fleet opened fire. 200 ships unleashed their full arsenal, plasma beams and missiles and kinetic rounds streaking across space toward the human formation. It was enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. Enough destruction to wipe out any fleet in the known galaxy The human ships did not even slow down. Rexus watched in horror as his weapons' fire splashed harmlessly against shimmering energy shields that should not have existed. The humans had shield technology that made Veluxi defenses look like paper. 300 years of secret development had given them protection that could shrug off anything his fleet could throw at them. And then the humans fired back. The first volley came from the lead dreadnought, a ship that Rexus now realized was named Eternal Fury in the human language. Beams of golden light lanced out, cutting through Veluxi shields like they were not even there. 3 warships exploded in the first second, 5 more in the next. The human weapons were not just stronger than Veluxi technology. They were from a completely different level of advancement. "Return fire!" Rexus screamed. "All ships, concentrate fire on that dreadnought." Every surviving Veluxi vessel turned its weapons on the Eternal Fury. Plasma beams converged on the human flagship from every direction. It was enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The Eternal Fury's shields flickered slightly. That was all. On the bridge of the human ship, Admiral Jizu watched the Veluxi assault with something that might have been pity. They were fighting with everything they had, and it was not even close to enough. 3 centuries of hiding had given humanity time to develop weapons and defenses that the galaxy could not comprehend. The Veluxi were throwing rocks at a tank. "Status report," she said calmly. "Shields at 94%, her tactical officer reported. Enemy fleet reduced by 37%. No human casualties." Captain Doheen stood beside her, his face as cold as stone. He watched the Veluxi ships burn and felt nothing. No satisfaction. No joy. Just a hollow emptiness where his heart used to be. "Admiral," he said quietly, "Rexus is attempting to surrender. He's broadcasting on all frequencies." Jizu looked at the screen, where the face of First Claw of Rexus appeared. The old warrior looked terrified. His composure was gone, replaced by the desperate fear of a creature who had finally met something stronger than himself. "Please," Rexus said. "I surrender. We all surrender. Stop this slaughter, and we will." "Sol did not get to surrender," Jisu interrupted. 8 million people did not get to beg for their lives. Children did not get to ask for mercy before your weapons turned them to ash. She turned to her weapons officer. "Continue the attack. No survivors." The Battle of Sol lasted 4 hours. When it ended, not a single Veluxi ship remained intact. 200 warships, crewed by over 50,000 Veluxi soldiers, had been completely annihilated. The debris field would orbit Earth for centuries, a permanent reminder of what happened to those who crossed the final line. Admiral Jisu stood on her bridge, looking out at the wreckage of the enemy fleet. Behind her, the crew was silent. They had just won the greatest military victory in human history, but no one felt like celebrating. The fires of Sol still burned on the planet below. 8 million ghosts demanded more than victory. They demanded justice. "Send a message to the Galactic Collective," Jisu ordered. "Tell them what happened here today. Tell them that humanity is no longer hiding. And tell them," she paused, choosing her words carefully, "tell them we are coming." The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Every species in the Galactic Collective had seen the recordings. The hidden human armada emerging from nowhere. The Veluxi fleet being torn apart like paper. The face of Admiral Park Jisu, cold and merciless, as she refused to accept surrender and ordered the complete destruction of her enemies. For 5,000 years, the Veluxi had been the most feared military power in known space. They had conquered 17 civilizations, enslaved billions of beings, and ruled their empire with absolute brutality. No one had ever defeated them in open battle. No one had ever come close, and now they had been annihilated. by a species that the collective had classified as Threat Level 0, a species they had dismissed as primitive farmers barely capable of reaching their own moon. A species they had laughed at, exploited, and ignored for 300 years. The galaxy was terrified. Commander Shin Mirai led the first offensive wave into a Veluxy space. She was 43 years old, with sharp features and a mind that worked like a computer calculating firing solutions. Her carrier group consisted of 50 warships, each one carrying enough firepower to level a city. And she had orders to make the Veluxy pay for every drop of human blood they had spilled. Their first target was the staging area at a planet called Kreth 4, where the Veluxy had gathered 150 ships to reinforce the invasion of Earth. The reinforcements had never been sent because the invasion had ended in disaster. And now those ships sat in orbit, waiting for orders that would never come. Mirai brought her fleet out of hyperspace, directly above the Veluxy formation. The enemy ships scrambled to raise shields and arm weapons, but they were too slow. Far too slow. "This is Commander Shin Mirai of the Human Defense Force," she broadcast. "Surrender your vessels and release all enslaved populations immediately. This is your only warning." The Veluxy commander appeared on her screen. He was younger than Vrexus had been, with bright orange shell plates and an arrogant tilt to his head. He clearly had not watched the recordings from Sol System, or he had convinced himself that they were somehow faked. "You primitive insects," he snarled. "You think one lucky victory gives you the right to threaten the Empire? We will crush you and you're pathetic." Mirai cut the transmission and turned to her weapons officer. "Target their flagship. Fire." A single beam of golden light lanced out from her carrier. It punched through the Veluxy flagship shields like they did not exist and cored straight through the center of the ship. The vessel exploded in a ball of fire, and the Veluxy commander's arrogant words died with him. "Repeat the message," Mirai said calmly. "Tell them I am not patient." The remaining Veluxy ships surrendered within minutes. Similar scenes played out across a dozen star systems. Human fleets appeared without warning, struck with overwhelming force, and demonstrated exactly what 3 centuries of hidden development had produced. They freed slave populations that had been working in Veluxy mines for generations. They destroyed military installations and weapon factories. They captured Veluxy officers and compiled records of every atrocity the Empire had committed at each location. They left a simple message broadcast on all frequencies. "We remember our dead. We will have justice." The Galactic Collective Council convened in emergency session. Representatives from over 400 species gathered in the Great Chamber on the capital world of Nexus Prime. And for the first time in living memory, fear filled the air instead of the usual political boredom. Speaker Orithis, a tall being with pale blue skin and 3 eyes, stood at the central podium and tried to restore order. Her species had served as diplomats for millennia, but nothing in her training had prepared her for this moment. "Order!" she called out, her voice amplified to fill the enormous chamber. "The council will have order." Slowly, the noise died down. Hundreds of alien faces turned to look at her, each one wearing an expression of barely contained panic. "The humans have delivered their demands," Orithis announced, her voice carefully neutral. "They require a full accounting of every species the Veluxy conquered, every population enslaved, every atrocity committed over the past 5,000 years. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The Veluxy ambassador, a scarred old warrior named Second Claw Threx, pushed forward through the crowd. "This is outrageous," Threx shouted. "The humans have committed an act of war. They destroyed our fleet without provocation. The council must respond with unified military force." "Without provocation?" someone called from the crowd. It was Ambassador Yoon Hana, Earth's representative, who had been watching silently from the back of the chamber. She walked forward, her small human frame seeming fragile among the larger alien beings, but her voice carried like thunder. "Your fleet burned Sol to the ground," Hana said. 8 million people dead in 11 minutes. Children, families, people whose only crime was living in the wrong city. "And you dare speak of provocation?" Thrax sneered at her. They were primitives, cattle. Their death served as a necessary lesson. "The only lesson learned was by us," Hana replied. "We learned that the Veluxi Empire considers mass murder an acceptable negotiating tactic. We learned that no species is safe while your kind holds power. And we learned that if we want to protect ourselves and others, we must take that power away." She turned to address the full council. "Humanity does not seek to conquer the galaxy. We do not want to replace one empire with another. But we will not stand by while billions suffer under Veluxi cruelty. We demand reparations for every species they have wronged. We demand trials for those who ordered and committed atrocities. And we demand—" She paused, and a cold smile crossed her face. "We demand the Veluxi homeworld." The chamber erupted into chaos. Thrax was screaming threats and insults. Other representatives were shouting questions and demands. But underneath the noise, Hana noticed something interesting. Some of the representatives were not protesting at all. They were watching, waiting, hoping that these were the species that had suffered under Veluxi rule. The conquered, the enslaved, the forgotten victims of 5,000 years of brutality. For the first time in their lives, they saw a chance for justice, and they were not going to let it slip away. Over the following weeks, the collective began to fracture. Species that had long resented Veluxi domination openly declared support for humanity. Former slave worlds rose up against their masters. Inspired by the example of Earth, the Veluxi military, already weakened by the disaster at Sol, found itself fighting on dozens of fronts against enemies who had spent generations learning to hate them. Commander Mireille continued her campaign, liberating world after world. Captain Doyen, still carrying the cold emptiness where his family had been, led strike teams to capture high-ranking Veluxi officials and secure evidence of their crimes. Admiral Jisoo coordinated the entire war from her flagship, watching as the empire that had threatened to enslave humanity crumbled like rotten wood. But even as they won battle after battle, the humans never forgot why they were fighting. Every ship in the fleet carried a memorial plaque listing the 8 million dead of Sol. Every soldier wore a patch with the Korean characters for "Remember" on their shoulder. Every officer began each day by reciting the names of children who had been killed in the bombardment. This was not a war of conquest. This was a war of justice. And humanity would not stop until justice was done. The reckoning had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. 1 year had passed since the Sol massacre. Admiral Park Jisoo stood on the observation deck of the Eternal Fury, watching the Veluxi homeworld rotate slowly beneath her. The planet was called Velox Prime, a world of red deserts and towering hive cities where the insect species had evolved over millions of years. From orbit, it looked almost peaceful, with clouds drifting across its surface and lights glowing in the darkness of the night side. She had imagined this moment countless times during the long years of hiding. Standing above the homeworld of humanity's greatest enemy, the power to destroy everything they had built resting in her hands. In her darkest moments, she had wondered if she would feel satisfaction, triumph, the joy of victory after 3 centuries of patient preparation. Instead, she felt only tired. The war was over. The Veluxi Empire had collapsed completely, not just from military defeat but from internal rebellion. Slave species across their territory had risen up against their masters, inspired by humanity's example. Worlds that had been conquered generations ago declared independence. Military commanders who had committed, The worst atrocities found themselves hunted by the very soldiers they had once commanded, the empire that had terrorized the galaxy for 5,000 years. Was now nothing but scattered remnants and bitter memories. Captain Kang Do-hyun entered the observation deck and stood beside her. He was thinner now, his face lined with grief that would never fully heal. The coldness in his eyes had not disappeared, but it had changed over the past year. What had once been pure rage had transformed into something more controlled, more purposeful. The Collective Council has completed the trials, he reported. 3,700 Veluxi officers found guilty of atrocities. Sentences range from life imprisonment to execution. Jisoo nodded slowly. And the civilian population? Protected, as you ordered. The new interim government is functioning. Representatives from the liberated species are helping to rebuild infrastructure and establish fair laws. There have been some incidents of revenge violence, but our peacekeeping forces have kept it contained. She turned to look at him. You could have argued for destruction. After what they did to your family, no one would have blamed you for wanting their entire species wiped out. Do-hyun was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but steady. My wife was a teacher. She spent her life helping children learn and grow. My daughters wanted to be artists. My parents grew vegetables in their garden and gave them to neighbors who could not afford to buy food. He paused, his jaw tight with controlled emotion. If I destroyed an entire species to avenge them, I would become exactly what the Veluxi were. I would become the kind of monster that my family would have been ashamed of. He turned to face her directly. Yuna would have wanted justice, not genocide. She would have wanted protection for the innocent, punishment for the guilty, and a future where no one else has to suffer the way we did. So that is what I will fight for. That is how I will honor her memory. Jisoo felt something warm spread through her chest. Pride, perhaps, or hope. After everything they had been through, the darkest parts of humanity had not won. They had shown the galaxy that they could be powerful without being cruel, strong without being merciless. A communication officer's voice came through the speakers. Admiral, Ambassador Yoon Hana is requesting contact. She says the Collective Council is ready to receive you. Tell her I am on my way, Jisoo replied. She took one last look at Velox Prime, then turned and walked toward the shuttle bay. Do-hyun fell into step beside her. What happens now? He asked. Now we build something better. The old collective was corrupt. It allowed empires like the Veluxi to grow and consume other species without consequence. We need a new system, new laws, new protections for the weak against the strong. And humanity will lead this new order? Jisoo shook her head. Humanity will help build it, but we will not rule it. We did not fight a war against one empire just to create another. Every species deserves a voice. Every people deserves the right to determine their own future. The shuttle carried her down to Nexus Prime, where the Collective Council had once again assembled. But this time, the atmosphere was different. Fear had been replaced by cautious hope. The representatives who had once laughed at humanity now watched with respect as Admiral Jisoo walked to the central podium. Ambassador Hana stood beside her, along with Commander Shin Mai-rei and a dozen other human officers who had become heroes during the war. Behind them, displayed on massive screens, were the faces of beings from every liberated world. Former slaves who had finally tasted freedom. Children who would grow up without fear. Parents who would never again watch their families be torn apart by alien masters. 1 year ago, Jisoo began, her voice echoing through the vast chamber. The Veluxi Empire attacked Earth. They killed 8 million innocent people in an act of senseless cruelty. They expected us to surrender. They expected us to become their slaves, to work in their mines and factories until we died of exhaustion and despair. She paused, looking around at the assembled representatives. Instead, they awakened something that had been sleeping for 300 years. They reminded us of what humanity has always been capable of when pushed to the edge. We are survivors. We are fighters. We are the species that walked out of Africa with nothing but stone tools and spread across an entire planet. We are the species that survived ice ages and plagues and wars that killed millions. We are the species that refused to die, no matter how many times the universe tried to destroy us. Her voice softened slightly. But we are also more than that. We are the species that created art and music and poetry. We are the species that explored the stars because we wondered what was out there. We are the species that believes in justice and compassion, in the fundamental dignity of all thinking beings. We did not come to the galaxy as conquerors. We came as neighbors. And when our neighbors were in danger, we fought to protect them. She looked at the screens showing the faces of liberated beings. The Veluxi thought that power meant domination. They thought that strength meant the ability to cause suffering. But true power is the ability to protect. True strength is the courage to stand for what is right, even when it costs everything you have. She straightened her shoulders and addressed the council directly. Humanity proposes a new charter for the Galactic Collective, one based on equality, justice, and mutual protection. Every species, regardless of their technology or military strength, will have equal rights and equal representation. Slavery will be abolished in all forms. Atrocities will be punished regardless of who commits them. And any species that threatens the peace will face the combined strength of all others. She smiled slightly, the first real smile she had allowed herself in a year. We did not hide for 300 years because we wanted to conquer the galaxy. We hid because we wanted to survive. And now that we have shown what we are capable of, we want to use that capability to build something better. A galaxy where children do not have to fear being stolen from their families. A galaxy where no species has to hide in the shadows, waiting for the day when they will be strong enough to defend themselves. She extended her hand toward the assembled representatives. Join us. Help us create this future. Let the sacrifice of soul and all the other victims of Veluxi cruelty mean something. Let their deaths be the foundation of a new era of peace and cooperation. For a long moment, there was silence. Then, slowly, representatives began to rise from their seats. The first were the liberated species, those who had suffered longest under Veluxi rule. Then came others who had watched the Empire's brutality with silent shame. Then even more, until the entire chamber was standing, applauding, cheering. Admiral Jisoo watched them with tears in her eyes. Beside her, Dongyu stood at attention, his face finally showing something other than grief. Hope, pride, a sense that his family's deaths had not been meaningless behind them. Through the great windows of the council chamber, the stars shone bright and endless. A galaxy of infinite possibilities, waiting to be explored by beings who had finally learned to work together. Humanity had entered the galactic stage, not as conquerors, but as liberators. Not as tyrants, but as the defenders of those who could not defend themselves. They had turned their greatest tragedy into a gift for all beings. A new order built on justice instead of fear. The universe would never underestimate them again. And somewhere, in a memorial garden that orbited Earth, 8 million names were carved in crystal that would last forever. A reminder of the price of freedom. A promise that their sacrifice would never be forgotten. The story of humanity among the stars had only just begun.